Welcome to Up to No Good. Today we're talking about culture war. Everybody keeps calling it a culture war, but that term, that word, war, is doing more damage than a lot of the issues we're actually arguing about. Because in war, you're forced to pick sides. And then it turns your neighbor into an enemy, your family get-togethers into a battlefield, and your mind into a recruitment office. What's happening in Western culture is real. We all feel it. It's in the loneliness, the anxiety, the slight feeling that everything's just a little bit off. Like tension is never settled and we're constantly waiting for the next event to destabilize us further. We feel severed from our traditions and we don't really know what to replace them with. We feel like the people who are tasked with leading aren't really leading anything, they're just constantly managing optics. They do whatever they want and then try to convince us that it's what we actually should want. Or worse, when we call attention to the mismanagement of the office that they've been given, we're slapped with some sort of title like bigot or traitor to the cause. And in general, when people don't feel like they're being led properly, they get loud, or they just go numb. So yes, something is happening, but I don't think war is the right framing. Because war implies armies with clearly defined goals, missions, outcomes. And that's not what I see. After watching the culture and politics shift over the past 20 years, I don't even feel like that's what's happening. What I see is more like a cultural infection, and most of the time the people who are speaking the loudest about it aren't doctors. They're not even trying to help. They're more like ambulance chasers with merch. It's often the same people selling solutions are the same ones creating more problems. They're profiting on both ends all along the way. From where I sit, we're not at war with one another. We're a society dealing with a multifaceted breakdown. The breakdown of meaning, trust, belonging, and purpose, but we're constantly arguing over the proper treatment. And the culture war label, it doesn't help. It doesn't help us heal, doesn't even help us diagnose the actual problems. It helps people profit off the fact that everyone's hurting though. And if you call it a war, don't be surprised when people start acting like soldiers. Because when you call it a war, you don't create dialogue, you create loyalty tests. In war, nuance looks like betrayal. Questions look like weakness. Compromise looks like surrender. And empathy looks like fraternizing with the enemy. And now suddenly, everything is the enemy. A pastor, a friend, a journalist, your uncle at Thanksgiving. Everyone becomes a symbol, and that symbol is something that either you represent or you're opposed to. And symbols are easier to hate because they're not human. The walls close in on all sides, and we shut people out. And then we wonder why we're fragmented and isolated, and why some people seem to be stuck in echo chambers. And this is why I call it a bad metaphor, the culture war. It makes it emotionally satisfying to be cruel to people, as long as you're defending something. And it gets worse than that, because once you've accepted that everything is war frame, next becomes the everything is an existential threat frame. And if you let people tell you what an existential threat is, you'll start believing them, you'll start looking for them, you'll start seeing them, and you'll start living everyday normal life as if everything is a threat against you. Oh no, the sun causes cancer, don't go outside. Watch out, your car causes global warming. Don't buy shoes from that company because they're made in a sweatshop in China. There's chemicals in the water and eating meat is inhumane. Look, some of these concerns have real things behind them, but that's not the point. The point is what happens to your mind when everything gets framed as an immediate moral emergency. Next thing you know, you've sold all your stuff, you're living barefoot in the woods, foraging on tree bark, trying to eat the bugs, own nothing, and be happy. And you're not even free. You've traded one form of control for another. You're still being panic-pilled. You've just switched from the name brand to the generic at the same price. And let's be honest, on a gut level, we all feel and see the same exact problems. Rising cost and economic pressure, a lack of connection, institutions that feel performative, a loss of shared meaning, and leaders that just feel like they're out of touch. And this doesn't mean that we all agree on why it's happening, but it means that we're not dealing with two separate armies here. We're dealing with tens, if not hundreds of million people with the same idea of something feels off, what's wrong, and how do we fix it? That's not war. It's a stressed organism trying to recalibrate itself and find homeostasis. And here's the reality of it, is that If it's an infection, then the goal should be healing. But if it's a war, then the goal is just simply winning. And winning is profitable. In a war, you need enemies, you need targets, you need constant emergencies, fear-based headlines, you need a daily dose of outrage that keeps you coming back. So what happens? Well, the loudest voices rise to the top. Not because they're the wisest, but because they're the most incendiary, and therefore the most addictive. Some are grifters, some are charlatans, and some are outright sociopaths. Not all, but there's enough of them to make you skeptical. Because the attention economy rewards inflammation, not insight. And yeah, sometimes it's on the left, sometimes it's on the right, sometimes it's a person who's apolitical and they just discovered society last week, and now they want to be your spiritual commander. My general rule of thumb is that anybody who's trying to decide for you or tell you who your enemy is a person you should treat with extreme skepticism. You should treat them like a doctor who's trying to give you a diagnosis without running any tests or having any information on you. Here's why I prefer infection over war. An infection has symptoms that are diagnosable. It has contributing factors. It has periods of flaring up and then subsiding. And there's often an antidote and a way to cleanse the infection. And if it truly is an infection, then our job shouldn't be to scream at other sick people. It should be to treat it effectively. Recognize the symptoms, identify what makes it worse, choose treatment that actually works, and build immunity moving forward. What are the symptoms? Well, here's a quick list. There's distrust everywhere, with media, with institutions, amongst each other. Loneliness, fragmentation, and atomization. Rage as entertainment. The collapse of meaning. People don't even know what life is for anymore. Leaders are disconnected from the people that they're supposed to be leading, from the regular people. And what makes it worse? Algorithmic outrage, moral vanity, needing to be one of the good ones, but it's often just performative. Scapegoating and constant identity-based bait. So what helps? Local connection, patient conversation, truth over teams, accountability without hatred, and the big one is rebuilding shared practices. Family, ritual, community, craft, duty, collectivization. This isn't a battlefield strategy, this is a recovery plan. I'll be upfront and honest with you, I'm not a really politically motivated person. My background is a little bit different and my viewpoints are a little bit different because I grew up under the care of the government in foster care and group homes, and I know firsthand what it's like to be cared for by the government. They're not very great at it with something as vulnerable as a child, let alone average citizens. They don't do a great job to begin with. I don't really take a huge interest in voting. I haven't voted since 2012, mainly because I don't feel there's anybody who represents my views, as well as nobody seems like they're accountable enough to actually uphold the oath that they take to office. Just my personal view, though. Nonetheless, I've paid attention to how the world has changed over the years and the way that culture and politics have kind of bled together into an inseparable idea. I believe at the end of the day, the majority of us are trying to do the exact same thing, and that's just make sense of a confusing world and protect the things we love. But along the way, we're being trained to view each other as threats. And when the leaders of society are out of touch, the political leaders, the media leaders, the corporate leaders, people stop needing leadership the way they once did, and they just go shopping for it in the marketplace of ideas. And seems like a lot of people are buying it from the absolute worst salesmen. So if you want to challenge yourself, if you want to do something different, if you want to stop participating in the culture war, here's something you could do over the next 7 days. You can stop using war-based language. There are no enemies. There's no us and them. There's just Americans. There's just people. There are just humans. Nobody's destroying, nobody's coming for us. There is no war. Describe the issue like a human being. Ask diagnostic-based questions, not dominance questions. Not who's right, but what's the problem, what's the solution, and how can we actually improve life? Find someone you disagree with and humanize them. I'm not saying surrender your values, but I'm saying look at the human element of them. Try to understand who they are, why they are, and realize that at the end of the day, you and that person are both human. And this also stops you from outsourcing your mind to whatever gets the most clicks. If we keep calling it a culture war, then we'll keep acting like it. And one day we'll wake up and realize We didn't just argue about culture. We all became infected. I don't want to win any wars against my neighbor. I want a culture that heals itself. I want leaders that remember that they serve people, not narratives. And I want the loudest voices to stop being the most profitable ones, unless they're right on something. So no, I don't believe in the culture war. I believe we're sick. But I also believe we can get better. Till next time, always, stay up to no good.